Sometimes when we look at the certain people, the first thing that comes to mind is not a thought, but a feeling. A quiet sense that something is off, not dramatically wrong or obviously broken, just not moving the way we expect it to. They are still there, in the same place, with the same patterns, the same poses, and the same unfinished moment. We assume they would have outgrown by now, and without realizing it, a question began to form in us, not spoken loud or even fully shaped. Why isn't this changing? Why he's not changing? Not out of cruelty or judgment, mostly out of exhaustion, because we don't know how to relate to something that refuses to move forward. At the first, we give it time, then understanding, then patience, and eventually we start reaching for explanation. Maybe they're stuck, or afraid, or maybe they don't see what we see. And quietly, almost politely, we place them just outside what we consider functional. Not because they are bad, but because their way of living doesn't match the timeline we believe makes sense. We don't usually think of it as a control. We think of it as a concern. But concern has a direction, and direction always implies where someone should be going. What unsettles us is not that they struggle, it's that they struggle without trying to resolve it in a way we recognize. They don't narrate their pain properly, they don't package it as a growth, they don't turn into transition phase, they stay. This staying makes us nervous because staying suggests a choice. And once something looks like a choice, we feel entitled to question it. Why would you remain here? Why wouldn't you want more? Or why wouldn't you change this? But maybe the issue isn't that something is wrong with them. Maybe the issue is that they are actively choosing a way of being that we don't know how to justify. Not because it's healthy or admirable, but because it's familiar. Because it costs less than transformation. Because it doesn't require rebuilding from the ground up. We rarely consider how expensive change actually is. To change is not to improve. It is to dismantle. To give up the routine that once protected you. To let go the identities that made sense when nothing else did. To risk something becoming someone without a clear strategy for survival. From the outside, it looks like stagnation. From the inside, it can feel like control. Not control over life, but control over damage. Some people do not move forward because moving forward means walking into uncertainty without armor. And what we interpret as avoidance may simply be risk management. We like to believe that growth is always the right answer, that the self-awareness naturally leads to change, that understanding yourself creates momentum. But awareness doesn't always liberate. Sometimes it freezes. Because once you fully see yourself, you also see the cost of becoming different. You see what you would lose, who you would disappoint, which version of yourself would no longer be allowed to exist. And some people decide consciously or not, that the loss is too high. So they stay where they are. Not because they don't know better, but because they do. This is where our discomfort depends. Because if they are unaware, we can guide them. If they are broken, we can fix them. But if they are choosing, then our role becomes unclear. We are forced to confront the possibility of their life is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be respected. And that is much harder because respect does not give us leverage. We can no longer frame ourselves as a helpers, survivors, or guides. We became witnesses instead. And witnessing without intervening feels like failure, especially in a culture that treats improvement as a moral obligation. We are taught that saying the same is suspicious, that discomfort must be temporary, that unresolved states are sign of denial. But not every unresolved state is waiting for resolution. Some are holding patterns, some are holding compromises, some are deliberate limits placed on how much a person is willing to lose in the name of becoming better. We rarely ask what stability costs someone else. We assume that becoming their life looks heavy, it must be unbearable. But heaviness can be predictable, and predictability can feel safer than hope. Hope requires vulnerability. Hope demands disappointment. And some people have already had enough of that. So when we try to fix them, we are often asking them to reopen a door they work very hard to close. We say it for their own good, but sometimes it's for our comfort. Because sitting next to someone who refuses to move forces us to examine our own fear of stillness. It makes us a question whether progress is always real or just socially rewarded movement. It makes us uncomfortable with the idea that a life can be coherent without being aspirational. And that discomfort turns into urgency. Advice arrives too quickly. Solutions appear before understanding. Encouragement becomes pressure. And slowly the relationship shifts. They become a project. We become evaluators. Even if we never say it loud, the imbalance is felt in the pauses, in the tone, in the way silence is interpreted as a problem. For some people, being held has always meant being corrected, being told that their instincts are wrong, that their pacing is unacceptable, that who they are now is merely a draft. So when we offer change, they hear judgment. Not because we intend it, but because history taught them to expect it, and they withdraw. Not out of stubbornness or ignorance, but out of self-preservation. At some points, we are faced with a choice. We can keep trying to fix them, which keeps us feeling useful, but slowly erodes the relationship. Or we can stop. And stopping is not passive. It's an active decision to remain without leverage. To accept that this person may never become easier to understand, easier to love, or to explain. That their life may not be resolved into something clean or inspiring. And that staying does not guarantee transformation. This is where many people live. Not because they don't care, but because care without control feels unbearable. Because we are taught that love should improve outcomes. But sometimes love only witnesses, and witnessing does not come with closure. Some people are not meant to be fixed because fixing assumes that there are a correct version of them waiting to emerge. And maybe there isn't. Maybe there is only the version that exists now, making choice we don't fully understand, managing cost we will never pay, protecting themselves in a way that look limiting from the outside. And maybe the real tension is not between broken and whole. Maybe it's between our need for movement and their decision to stay.